All right, folks. So this second lecture here for week 12, I want to talk about MLA formatting, and I want to continue to build upon what we're doing with the argument stuff that you turned in on Monday. You were supposed to turn in 3 paragraphs, potentially go in your argument section. Now, when I looked at those, I gave some feedback, and your first discussion forum this week will be designed for you to interact with me and respond to that feedback. But I also want to, and this segues pretty nicely here, talk some more about MLA, and specifically talk about some things that I saw, and let's see if we can clarify some stuff, particularly when it comes to MLA. And then I want to hear from you guys in the forum your thoughts and feelings and questions about this some more. First thing I want to note here, punctuation in quotations goes after the citation, not before. Now, this is important. So I have here a little MLA flashcard I created for my 101 class. And it talks about short quotations. So short quotations, to indicate as short quotations, fewer than 4 typed lines of prose or 3 lines of verse in your text, enclose the quotation within double quotation marks. So here are 2 examples, one with where we use the author's name in the sentence and when we don't. And so you see here, according to folks' study, comma, dreams may express. Now, this is where our words stop, and this is part of the integration, quote, profound aspects of personality. Now, notice here, no punctuation, close quote, parentheses, 184, period. And then, of course, I wrote this the other way here where I didn't include the author's name. The thing is here, this is an integrated quotation. And the important thing to put here, and why we have this distinction here, is that I need to make sure that this belongs to this quotation. If I put a period here and not here, then I am telling my audience that this belongs to the next sentence. If I put a period here and here, I have made this its own sentence. Period represents a full stop. And beneath here, I've got some basic rules. So first of all, always integrate the quotations. We'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. Open and close quotation marks. You need both. No punctuation inside the quotation marks. Punctuation only after the citation. Citations, usually the author's last name. If there is none, then you may use the title of the work. Include any page numbers if there are some, or if you already introduced the author before, it would only be page numbers. And if there are no page numbers, you don't put page numbers. And always follow up with explanations. So that's just a general rundown there. Okay. So that one's specifically about citations. So I saw people who weren't giving citations. So I want to make sure that you're doing this. And first of all, we'll get to that later, but also making sure that you are properly punctuating. So when you close your quotation, there should be no punctuation. It should come only after the citation itself. And this is all about clarity. Okay. Now, the next thing here is about using direct quotations. I saw a few people who didn't do this, and I want you to understand that you need to be directly quoting from sources. You need to be introducing, integrating, citing it, quoting it, citing it, and then explaining it, all right? And these should come both from your graphic novel and external sources, all in the aim of making a case for your argument, which is itself centered around the graphic novel. Now, getting back to this idea about the citing quotations, paraphrasing, and summaries. Now, typically, whether you are directly quoting something, paraphrasing, and or summarizing the works of others in your work, you need to cite that work. That means providing an in-text citation. It's going to say here to refer to point 5. We'll see in a second here, because we need to do this, because if you don't do this, this is how you get trapped in plagiarism. Okay. Integrating quotations. Now, above here, in this part here, I did talk about integrating quotations, but I went on and did a little bit more here. Taking another look at this, when you're putting a quotation in your paper, lead to it, introduce it, as well as integrate it with your own words. And this is, I'm referring back to this old example from McLeod. Here is that black right here. That sentence is really an introduction topic sentence. What's in red here is an integrated quotation. So you see here, Scott McLeod points out that comics are, quote, juxtaposed, pictorial, so forth, yada, 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 in the viewer, close quote. Here is my citation. Keep in mind that my citation here is a little bit different because I'm quoting more than one work by the author. All right. And then there's my period afterwards, and then I explain it. Okay. So make sure that you're doing that. If you have questions about any of these things, these are the things I want to talk about in the forum. In-text citations. Now, I did a little bit more of a deep dive on this one because I want to talk about the different ways we do in-text citations. And there are some basic rules. First of all, if the source has an author, then it's the author's last name that goes in this in-text citation. So, example, if the author's name is Kenneth Burke, then Burke, last name, goes in the citation. If there are two authors, and this is something that would be quite common for most of you with your graphic novels, for example, Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, who are the author and artist of All-Star Superman, I write Morrison and Quitely. Okay? Pretty simple. Now, once you go to 3 or more, you get to do a little shortcut. So, for example, you'll use if you have 3 or more authors, you will use the last name of the first author, and then you get to write et al. For the rest. Example, Jay Moore, Rob Johnson, and Michael Thomas simply becomes Moore et al. Period. Okay, make sure that you write et al. Period in the citation, in text citation. Okay. If the sources don't have an author, this sometimes happens in, say, you'll notice here I say either in we use the title of the work, usually an online article or an anonymous post on a website or a television show. These are sometimes used the quotation marks. And you'll see here an example. Here is my example of the source. This is the article. There's no given author. It says Statistics on Global Warming in the Americas. And then what I wrote in the in-text citation, I keep the quotation marks, Statistics on Global Warming. Note there, and I note below here, I am allowed to shorten this for purposes of the in-text citation. Now, I don't want to shorten it too much, but as long as I don't have another article that starts by saying the statistics of global warming, I can cut off the prepositional phrase in the Americas, okay? Just to save space, because we don't want these to be so large and intrusive they're taking up whole lines. All right? And after this, perhaps, and this is a rare occasion, you have a source that may be an online source that has no title and it has no author, which you wouldn't really find one from CNN.com, but just for the sake of it, that's the only time you would write a blank.com or a blank.edu. And that's usually very rare. Typically, if you go to something like this, whatever the title, that usually the title sometimes often is the name of the page that you're on. So keep that in mind. Number 6, if it's a movie or television show, for example, here is the title of a movie, An Inconvenient Truth. I simply keep the italics and write An Inconvenient Truth. Television show, for example, here, Valentine's Day from The Office. I simply write the title of the episode in quotes, Valentine's Day. Okay, and then I do have here, this links to the place on my 101 site where I've used this and talked about this some more. And there's a little bit more material here and a little bit more discussion. So if you want to, or you want to look at this, you can go take a look at this, come back, or simply ask questions in the discussion forum, and I will try to help you out. Now, the last thing I want to talk about underneath this whole little thing here is I want to talk about block quotations, okay? Now, block quotations and short quotations have a little bit of differential, okay? For example, and I cite this as a starting point, with a short quotation, one that's under 3 lines of typed text, the rule is to integrate into your own prose. Example, according to Kenneth Burke, comma, quote, humans are simple using animals, close quote, 3. What I've done here, I've integrated it with my own words. I've used the quotation marks to distinguish what is my words and what is somebody else's words. And I don't put punctuation inside at all. I put it outside right there to make sure it clearly, because obviously I'm going to be typing another sentence after this. Now, I want to look briefly at this. Now, what happens with a block quotation is you actually distinguish it in a slightly different fashion. For example, I want you to look at this example right here. This is a rather long quote, but I want to note a couple of differences, okay? Nellie Dean treats Heathcliff poorly and dehumanizes him throughout her narration, quote. Now, this would be indented, okay? I'll go back and include an example from a typed text below here maybe. I'll get another screen capture. But you would have as a indented quotation, and I'll do that because I wanted to see the explanation, but because the explanation isn't going to happen until the next line, you're literally going to drop down to another line before you start. You don't have to put the period anywhere but right here, and there are no quotation marks. So you'll see here no quotation marks needed because it's offset by itself, so we know it's a quoted piece All right. Punctuation becomes before the citation. And there is always still needs to be follow-up explanation. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go find another screen capture of another example of this to include below here to help you guys out. All right. So look for that when you're watching the after you watch the video, or when you get to this part of the video, there'll be an added section here with another example, so you can sort of see what this looks like in a more general, actually typed text. All right. So I look forward to discussing this stuff and answering these kind of questions in the discussion forum. So I will see you guys there.